This is episode 68 of the Fitness and Post podcast. To access the show notes for this episode, please visit fitnessandpost.com/68. Also, if you enjoy this episode, I have prepared a bonus document titled 5 Ways to Overcome Your Sugar Addiction, with helpful programs and resources to help you if you want to cut back on harmful sugar and sweeteners, but you don't know where to start. You can download your free bonus document at fitnessandpost.com/68download. This episode is sponsored by editstock.com. Editstock provides high-quality, uncut film footage for those who want to learn or practice the art of video editing. This cool service offers raw footage from a variety of genres, including action, comedy, sports, and documentary, so you can pick the same kinds of projects you're looking to get hired for. Editstock offers professional feedback on your work and even allows you to use your cuts for your demo reel. Multi-user educational licenses are also available. Visit editstock.com today to download a free sample scene and use the code FITNESS to save 10% on your order. My name is Zach Arnold, and I'm the creator of Fitness and Post. You may know me as Empire Editor on Twitter. I spent the last 10 years working long hours in a dark room and battled numerous health problems because of my less than ideal work environment, and that's what led me to building Fitness and Post. Whether you work in film and television post-production like me, or you're a designer, programmer, or anyone working a sedentary job all day, we bring you the practical tips, tools, and resources to bring health and wellness back into your life. You spend all day fixing in a post, now it's time for some Fitness and Post. Hello and welcome to the Fitness and Post podcast, where it is my mission to help you optimize the most powerful operating system that you have, yourself. Today, I am lucky enough to have not one but two guests, editors Monica Daniel and Sean Fever. Monica and Sean are both editors with a wide range of experiences in the industry, and they are also both returning guests of the podcast. And I will link to their previous episodes in the show notes if, for example, you'd like to learn about how to move from reality editing to scripted with Monica Daniel, or if you'd love to hear a fantastic conversation about sexism in post with Sean Fever. In today's episode, though, we go off the beaten path a little and we don't talk much about editing at all. What we do dive into very deeply is the emotional journeys that both Monica and Sean have taken in trying to eliminate sugar from their diets and how difficult that is working in the post industry with so many snacks that are within arm's reach. If you're hoping to curb your cravings for Coke, Diet Coke, which frankly is even worse, or that bowl of M&Ms next to your keyboard at all times, then this is the episode for you. But before we jump into the interview, I would like to announce that to my shock and absolute surprise, I have over 40 people enrolled in the first beta phase of my online course titled Move Yourself. This is beyond my wildest expectations, and this invite was to a very small subset of my contacts, so I am beyond excited about this course now. The beta enrollment is currently closed, but I plan to open the second phase of enrollment very soon, so if you're interested in becoming a beta member, all you have to do is enter your email at fitnessandpost.com to receive your invite when the second phase of enrollment is ready. So if you want to learn how to sit less, focus more, and become more active at work without finding extra time to go to the gym, get your name on this list before the price goes up again. Secondly, I would like to let my new listeners know about our Fitness and Post Amazon link and also thank my existing and longtime fans for using this link to make all of your Amazon purchases. You are literally helping me keep the lights on for Fitness and Post, and I am eternally grateful for your support. Here's how it works. All you have to do is visit fitnessandpost.com/Amazon. That's it. Super simple. This will redirect you to the Amazon homepage, and Amazon will then donate 5% of your purchase back to the Fitness and Post program, and you seriously, literally do not pay a cent. So if you enjoy this show and you hope to hear more episodes in the future, please write yourself a reminder to bookmark fitnessandpost.com/Amazon as your new Amazon homepage and use it for all of your Amazon shopping. I appreciate your support. And now, without further ado, my conversation with Monica Daniel and Sean Fever. I'm here today with podcast sensation Monica Daniel and NAB showreel sensation Sean Fever. I'm very, very excited about the show today because both Monica and Sean have pretty much been on this crazy fitness imposed journey with me since day one. They've seen the many iterations of the different things that we've done with the program. They've been in challenge groups, they've been in Facebook groups, so they really are kind of, beta members. Like, I think Monica's literally beta member like 2, and Sean, you're probably like beta member, I don't know, 10 or 15. So you guys have been around for a while, and I've gotten to know both of you very well, and I'm so excited to have you on board all the stuff that I've been doing so far and getting all the support. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having us, Zach.
So the reason that the idea for this show came up today is because sometime, I don't remember exactly when, but it was sometime in, I think, December, and you guys might remember more specifically, within the period of about 4 days, with no connection between the two of you whatsoever, Monica contacted me and then Sean contacted me, both saying, I am going cold turkey on sugar. I'm cutting all the sugar out of my life and I want to see what happens. And all three of us are absolute sugar junkies. And for those that might be new to the podcast, you're thinking, a fitness podcast run by a guy that's a sugar junkie? Yes, I am an absolute sugar junkie. And that's part of the reason that I started this journey, is I just realized that this was a problem that I had to fix. So I just want to talk today about your experiences, first of all, with where you started as like how your world actually was so centered on sugar. And I know that, Monica, you've posted pictures of, cookies and donuts and cakes in the office. And this is a really big problem in our industry. And I don't want there to be policies where there's no donuts allowed, no sugar allowed, no cookies allowed in like post-production facilities. This is not about removing things. It's about giving people the education and the option to find better choices once they have the knowledge and understand how sugar can actually be your kryptonite like it is to me. So let's just go. We'll start with Monica, then we'll jump into Sean. Monica, just kind of give the audience a background of your relationship with sugar. So let's start from there.
Well, I'll start off with, I love cookies. I love baking them. I love eating them right after they come out of the oven. And I have recently, actually. And, I'm the person who will eat the frosting off of the cake and leave like the pastry part and just eat the frosting. I love sugar. I'm not a big cereal person, but it's just like the frosting, the cookies, and it's funny because I don't go into like, a lot of times at work, they'll bring in like really fancy pastries and I just want the cat in Starburst. And so, but my big thing is cookies, and I love sugar. I've always had a sweet tooth, and I still very strongly do have a sweet tooth. I have to say I indulged myself over the Christmas break without feeling guilty about it. But yeah, I'm the worst with it. It's so bad so that now I have the PAs in the office. When they see me going near the sweet stuff, I'm like, stop me. And they're like, okay, we will. And they will, if they just see me walking by the pastries, even if I'm not looking at them, they'll actually like yell at me from across the room, don't do it. I'm like, okay, I won't. So it's kind of funny.
All right, let's move on to you now, Sean, and let's talk a little bit about your relationship with sugar, because I know that you and I have had several email conversations back and forth, and even a couple of podcast conversations about this. So let's talk about where you started.
I have just the worst relationship with sugar. I would look at a packet of Maryland cookies. I'm assuming you guys have Maryland cookies, right? You must do. And I would look at a packet of those and be like, yeah, that's a pretty okay dinner. And right. And I would eat chocolate bars, and I would eat chocolate and cookies until I felt sick. And then I would wait until I didn't feel sick anymore. And then I would keep eating the cookies and the chocolate. And I could just go round that cycle like a few times, like in an evening.
I've done that multiple times too, actually.
And it was just always around. It was always a substitute for dinner, or when I'd get home from school, like there'd just be a whole cupboard full of cookies. And I certainly didn't realize just what I was doing to myself, or the effect that it was having. And I realized about a year and a half ago, I was working in a trailer house, and I love movies, and I love trailers, and I love cutting them. And I would have like a chocolate bar after my lunch. And in the afternoon, I would feel like nothing in the world would make me happy. I had been loving what I was cutting in the morning, and I'd be still in the same project. But like 20 minutes after this chocolate bar, I would just be really demotivated, really depressed. And it took me a while to pick up on that. But there, daily chocolate bars, daily biscuits. If there was cake for someone's birthday, like I'd be going back for seconds, or I'd be the first in the line. Everything and anything. And if it was there, I'd know it was there. If there was anything in the office or at home, like I'd be like a hawk and I'd be all over it. So that's kind of where I started.
Yes, and I can say that both of those stories sound very familiar. Like when you laughed and said, oh, well, sometimes I'll just have these cookies for dinner. I've had entire boxes of Fruity Pebbles for dinner. And it wasn't 20 years ago. Like it's within the span of the last year, 2, 3 years where it's like, yeah, sure, I don't feel like making anything. I'm just going to have a box of Fruity Pebbles. And you just kind of, it's funny because you said, well, I would eat them until it made me sick. And I'm always thinking to myself, like, I'm a scientist and I'm going to eat this box of Fruity Pebbles and it's going to make me sick. And that's going to teach me that I'm not going to like it anymore. It's almost like the Clockwork Orange theory, right? And then the next day, nope, I still want to have another box of Fruity Pebbles. So, it just doesn't work. As soon as you're not sick anymore, you just want more. We'll go into that a little bit later in the show, just kind of talking about why that's actually happening. And I'm not going to dig too deep into the science because I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a certified dietitian, but I am definitely a food science geek and a nutrition geek. So I know a little bit more than the average bear, and we'll kind of go into some of the basics. But first, what I'd like to do is talk about how you guys decided I'm just going to go cold turkey. Because I'd actually asked both of you, was there a program? Was there a system? And you're just like, nope, I'm just cutting it out of my life. So let's go ahead. We'll go back to you, Monica.
My husband actually kind of acted as a catalyst for it because when I was working on Minority Report, it was pretty, like we talked, it was crazy hours. It was really stressful. And I would do really gross things like just to try to get through the day. I think one weekend I had like 4 Pop-Tarts in one day, which is really gross when you think about it. And it's just like pure sugar. But I was doing things like that to get through the day. I was like putting on weight. I was just feeling sluggish and not feeling good. Couldn't fit in my clothes. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And then my husband surprised me with something called, because I'm just like, I feel like an idiot when it comes to like food and eating the right foods because I always seem to make wrong choices or choices that I think are good choices, but actually aren't. And so my husband signed me up he found a Groupon for something called personal trainer food, where it's like a meal prep program where they pre-cook stuff and then they like freeze it and you put it in your freezer and then you just warm it up. And it's like really healthy food. It's mostly like vegetables and like meats and like eggs for breakfast. And so it's this whole program, and the whole point is they want to put you in ketosis to help you lose weight, just so you kind of have a better understanding of like how to eat. So the way I took it is I was like, well, now I have to do it because you just spent all this money and it's like a month worth of food, and I would feel like such a jerk. And this is what I've been wanting to do anyway. And so it was like a good kick in the butt. And I felt I would feel guilty if I didn't stick to it, because I know that's the big problem people have is like trying to stick to. This is kind of like was an extreme thing for me to do, to just like go on this like health food kick of these prepared meals, because I hate cooking, and it's all food that I could cook myself, but I hate cooking. I just hate it. So it's all stuff it's like just a bunch of steamed vegetables and like chicken and just various things. And so what that did is it was pretty strict, but I kind of picked and choose some of the advice the program gave me. So what I liked about that program was it was food I would eat. So like plain steamed vegetables, they didn't have any extra sauces. And they gave you like this like garlic butter sauce that you could put on for more flavoring, or you could season it if you want. And then just like, I like eating chicken. So just simple things like that. So I'm like, okay, this is food I would eat. It tastes good to me. But other parts of the program were like, hey, if you're feeling cravings, go ahead and have a diet soda to help curb those cravings. I was like, nope, not going to do it.
Yeah, they just lost my endorsement.
Nope. Yeah. I mean, I've actually, a couple people wanted to start on the program because they've seen me bring it to work. And I give them that caveat. I'm like, look, I don't like follow it to the letter as far as Diet Cola is bad. So I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is drink some water. Or actually what I do for afternoon snacks to help curb is I'll have Shakeology with water as my afternoon snack. I'll eat almonds. So it's like I kind of pick and choose. Like, I don't think it's like the 100% best program, but it works for me because it has enough of what I need. And then the things that I know I don't want to do as far as what they're recommending, I don't do. And it was really beneficial, but it was pretty much cold turkey, no more eating sugars. And that first week was rough. It was really rough and hard. And because there was like food everywhere, they bring donuts every week. They order pizza. And, I started it right when I was new at my current job. So it was like, that whole, and we talked about this before, like the food bonding, eating culture of the offices. Like I'm experiencing that now, but I just held firm and I was like, no, guys, I got to do this. I need to eat healthier. And they, they would ask every day, but they understood eventually. And they knew to stop asking me if I wanted donuts or pizza. So it was rough. And still, I actually lost 10 pounds in that first month, just like eating healthy. But as far as like continuing with how extreme that was, I'm looking at this is training me how to select the right foods and how to like make that conscious choice. No, don't eat that candy. No, don't eat that. Don't reach for almonds, because almonds are kind of my replacement for candy now. I don't overdo it, but because they're little bite-sized pieces, it just kind of satisfies that little like mental craving of me wanting to eat something small and bite-sized and have them in my hand and pop them in my mouth. So that's what I use the almonds for. So it kind of helps just kind of me change my mental outlook on how I'm eating. Not to say I would continue as extreme as that was. To me, it's kind of like a little bit of a mini boot camp to get me in the right foot. Throughout the holidays, it was really hard to try to eat as healthy as I could. I had the pastry here and there. I enjoyed my mashed potatoes or whatnot. And so I'm just kind of using it to train me to make better choices. So it's taking what I want out of that program. And it's just helpful for me because I could just pop the bags out of the freezer into my lunch bag and run to work. Because my other big weakness is I just hate cooking. This last week, I was really bad just because I was like, what? I'm going to enjoy it and not feel guilty. And then I'm actually starting another like extreme month where I'm like really sticking to the no sugar again. Because I don't want to do the thing where it's like, oh, I give up. I know it's going to be a process for me to just get past my mental craving for sugar. And so it's like, okay, now I'm going extreme again to try to get me to do it. And then afterwards I'll probably go lax. And it's probably something I would do like the extreme low, no sugar for every couple months possibly. But I'm not going to like kick myself for eating a pizza when I'm not in that mode.
Since you've kind of been talking about kind of your experience of going through the process of not eating it. One thing that I did real quick, just as a sidebar, is I brought up the actual ingredients in Pop-Tarts because you said that you were kind of sustaining yourself. And I'm just going to read them really, really quickly because one of the things I want to make sure I differentiate by the end of the show for people that just, nobody at this point thinks sugar is good for them. Like you don't need to sit here and prove the point. Sugar is good for you. No, they're wrong. It's not bad. Like those days are over. However, what people don't understand is how pervasive sugar is in everything, and it's not just looking for sugar. So I'm going to read through some of the first ingredients in a Pop-Tart. Enriched flour, which is basically code for the
sugar. It's
code for sugar, but it's basically flour that has been stripped of any and all nutrients. So it's just chemically created white flour that really is metabolized very, very similarly to table sugar. Corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, dextrose, soybean and palm oil, sugar, cracker meal, and it just goes on and on and on from there, including things like red 40, yellow 6. I can't imagine there being something that has a lot more stuff in it that your body just does not want than a Pop-Tart. And I'll tell you, I used to have Pop-Tarts for breakfast every single day. So I am no saint. I love brown sugar, cinnamon Pop-Tarts. Literally, they're just like heroin to me. Like my little eyes will turn into cartoon character pinwheels when I eat them. But there's a reason for that. And one thing that I wanted to touch on and go back to is you had mentioned my mental craving to sugar. And people need to understand that it's not a mental craving to sugar. It's a physical craving to sugar. It's a neurological process that's happening where they've actually proven now that the dopamine receptors and the craving receptors in your brain are activated 8 times more by sugar than they are by cocaine or heroin. So when somebody says, "Oh yeah, well, I'm a a sugaraholic," they kind of throw it away like it's a joke. It's not. And the food companies know this. So I'm not going to go too deep down the rabbit hole, but I wanted to kind of throw that in there and maybe go back later. But now I want to go over to you, Sean. I kind of go through the similar process, except with you had no program. And Monica's, yours really wasn't specifically, here's a sugar detox program. You just decided you were going to incorporate that to get the most out of what you were doing and get your money's worth. But Sean, you just were like, enough is enough. So let's talk a little bit about your process, and I want to understand how it felt going through it and just kind of what the journey was.
Yeah. I think, Zach, you had introduced me to the concept that sugar, there was more that met the eye with sugar, that it wasn't just a bad thing. It wasn't just, it's a little like fat or a bit too much butter or whatever, but there was this other dimension to it that meant that the behavior around it for some people resembled addiction. And that's not to say that it is an addiction. It's not. When we say like sugar addiction, it's a popular term that people have coined, and the jury is certainly out on whether it is addictive or not. I don't think the medical community has sort of settled on that yet. And there's lots of research that's out there that's sort of being done, I think, but there's nothing kind of concrete aside from a couple of studies that I think you're probably very aware of. But back in August, I was on a job. I was on a music job, and it was multicam, and we had a very quick turnover. And I love music multicam jobs. I love them. And we were on site. I forget which festival it was, but we had been on site for 2 days, and then we had got a cab, I think, back to London through the night, and then we were due to start the next day. I had two festivals really close to each other, so I might be just like mulching the two stories together. But we had a really, really quick turnaround. And there was, when we got back into London, there was 4 editors in one very small meeting room. And we were really packed into this room, and in the middle of summer with like a wheeled in aircon unit and our chairs bumping against each other. And I got really stressed. I was really feeling the pressure of how much work we had to get done, how many tracks we had to edit a day, how many bands we had to get through. And there was so much programming. I mean, the schedule was a lot. And the team was amazing, but I was really feeling the pressure. And there was a Tesco, a supermarket kind of on the way in. And I think I'd done a couple of days, and I just woke up that morning in August just feeling like I needed to lean on something. And my typical response in an edit or when I'm feeling stressed or upset is I'm suddenly eating chocolate. And there's no decision process. There's no, what should I do about this stress? I think I'll go to the shop and I think I'll buy a thing and then I'll consume it. I feel stress, and without really consciously making the decision, I'm reaching for that food that will make me feel better, which is chocolate or biscuits. And I went to the supermarket and I bought like 5 or 6 chocolate bars. I mean, just in case I was going to run out. Let's just buy more than I thought I could reasonably consume across the course of a day. And I bought a few different ones, and I carried them under. That was all that was in the carrier bag that I had. And I got into the office about 9:30, and I got in a bit before everyone, and people were having breakfast in the kitchen, and it's a really cool open office, and it feels like a startup company, and everyone's getting in and making their coffees and cooking their breakfast. And before I knew it, before the other editors had shown up, I had eaten everything in the bag. And just beside me was this plastic bag of shame with empty chocolate bars in. And it wasn't the physical feeling of being sick. I was looking at it feeling disgusted. And this was not an uncommon behavior at all. This was routine. And I think it was the fact that it was like 5 or 6 chocolate bars within the space of half an hour. I ate them all in the space of half an hour. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I'd had this sense of amnesia. Every time you eat chocolate and you feel bad, you sort of forget, because the strength of your want and your desire for that thing is stronger than your memory of how bad it made you feel. And so from that point on, I realized that I was probably one of these people who couldn't say no. I couldn't just have one, and I would have to cut it out entirely. So from that moment on, I just decided that I couldn't. It was very bad for me, and I needed to stop it. And that first week, we were still in this edit suite. We still got this little aircon unit, and I haven't really told anyone I'm doing this. I've just kind of decided, and I feel all those feelings of shame and disgust, and like I'm trying to concentrate on my work, but it's like there's a siren going off in my head, kind of going like, chocolate, you want chocolate, you want chocolate, you want chocolate, you want chocolate. Because now I'm not having it. Of course, it's the only thing that I can possibly think about. And one of the other editors, they had bought this massive bar of chocolate, because this is what editors do when they get stressed. They buy a massive like box or bar of chocolate, and they put it on the aircon unit, and then the whole room smelled of chocolate. And so I was just trying to get through that first week of not having anything. And it was I think it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, honestly. I would sustain or like resist the cravings by leaning into them. I could taste and I could feel those types of foods in my mouth so clearly. I didn't need to eat them. And that was how I kind of got through my first week. And occasionally I'd go into the kitchen and sniff the jars of Nutella and then put them down and run away again. And I got through the first month, and I was really, really, really proud of myself for getting through the first month. And I thought, okay, maybe I've broken the back of this. Maybe I'm home free. Maybe I could start to reintroduce some things. Maybe I could just have one biscuit. Maybe I could have just one slice of cake. And so I started very slowly testing those boundaries. And there was a birthday cake in the office, and I tried tasting like the tiniest morsel of icing, and it didn't taste how it did anymore, like it had before. It tasted like this weird sugar mousse thing. I was like, oh, I don't like that. Okay, that's fine. I don't like that. Weird, but don't like that. And then I tried a biscuit, and I thought, oh, I like that biscuit, and I don't feel like I need another one. But the next day I had 3. And the next day I had 7. And the next day was a Saturday, and I bought myself a chocolate cake and just sat and ate the whole thing. So my story, I think, is quite extreme. And I think it needs a bit of an extreme treatment, as it were. And I don't think this is going to be the case for most people who are deciding to get rid of sugar. But I had a really, really hard time. And I didn't have any sugar replacements. I didn't have any sweeteners and any honey or agave nectar or anything like that, because I didn't want to keep the craving alive. I just really needed that gone. And about 4 months in, which I think was around the time I emailed you, Zach, I finally didn't feel plagued by it anymore. It wasn't an everyday struggle anymore. And it was only a struggle when I was in like Marks and Spencer's, and you're queuing up for the till, and they've got chocolate like either side, and this like weaving gauntlet of sugar either side of you, and you're like, I just really need to get out of here. And Christmas was really hard, and all the kind of the cravings that I've been dealing with every day came back, because it was just in my face all the time. And I'm a very outside, out of mind person. So if it's not in the house, it's not around me, it doesn't bother me too much. But at Christmas time, of course, everyone's offering you things and sharing things and that kind of thing. So that's me in my relationship with sugar, really. It's shameful. Like, I'm embarrassed talking to you about it.
Well, I want to stop you right there, because I don't want you to be embarrassed. And I know that you have like the plastic bag of shame should be a t-shirt. Like, that's amazing. But I don't think you should feel ashamed. And I think when you say, well, my case is really extreme and I don't think other people will go through this, the sad thing, not sad for you, the sad thing for society is your story is normal. And I know, because I've read many, many other stories like this. So when you say that, oh, I spent this time and, was completely off of it, then I slowly introduced something into it, and then 4 days later I'm eating an entire chocolate cake, that's not uncommon, because you're feeding the chemical addiction that your brain has to sugar. So it's not just a matter of you don't have a lot of willpower, or you're a weak person, or you're a shameful person. This is a chemical addiction that develops in the brain, and the brain desires that. It's like when you were saying you could actually taste the chocolate, and it certainly didn't help that they had the chocolate smell radiating throughout the room. That certainly doesn't make it any easier, but that literally that's a neurological trigger. When you smell that chocolate, that is a trigger that goes off in your brain, and those dopamine receptors start saying, I want it, I want it, I want it. That's why you have companies like Cinnabon. I don't know if you have those in London, but there's a company called Cinnabon in the US, and they are in malls, and they just make these really gooey, just these cinnamon sweet buns that are literally just sugar bombs, and they're delicious. They're so freaking good. But they specifically don't put the Cinnabon stores or the Mrs. Fields stores in the food court. And it's not because of any kind of, specific, geographical reason or whatever. They specifically say, we want to be away from the other foods. So when you walk by our stores, the only thing that you smell is our cookies or our cinnamon buns, because that is a neurological trigger that instigates the craving in your brain that says, I must have this now. So you don't walk into a mall thinking, I really need a Cinnabon right now. But as soon as you smell it, that trigger goes off. Your neurology, all your neurons go crazy, and those dopamine receptors are saying, I must have, I must have, I must have. So I don't want you to feel any sense of shame because you don't have willpower or you made these decisions. That's what I want people to start understanding, and the information I want to get out there is that it isn't you. The food companies actually understand all of the science, and they're genetically engineering foods and scientifically engineering them to have the maximum amount of what they actually call the bliss factor, where you have a reaction where you just say, oh my God, this is so good. They do this with crunch. They do this with sweetness, where they will literally change the amounts of crunch or sweetness in a food by micro amounts until they scientifically get the most out of it, where they know that people are going to have the maximum amount of craving. I'll actually put a link to an article that talks about this bliss factor and insiders in the food industry that are now starting to anonymously blow the whistle on the fact that this is how the food industry works. So I don't want either of you to be thinking, oh my God, well, I'm so ashamed because I just want to have the cookies or the cake. This is way bigger than just people that are weak and don't have willpower. This is a much, much bigger issue. I want to get back to you, Monica, but one quick thing that I wanted to mention based on what you had said, Sean, that I think is a really interesting thought process that a lot of people go through is you said, well, I wasn't sweetening, any of my foods with sweeteners or agave nectar or whatever it is. And most people don't realize that sugar isn't just sugar. Sugar is so many different things. And they have now, I don't know the exact amount, but roughly 80% of the food supply, at least in this country, it's probably a little bit less now in the UK and in Europe because there are much stricter food standards over there than there are here. Nobody gives a crap what's in our food in the US. But over 80% of our food supply has some form of sugar or sweetener in it, but most people will look and say, oh, well, there's no sugar in here. It's because it's hidden under other things. And agave nectar is one of the biggest culprits, where somebody will say, oh, well, I'm using agave nectar, so it's healthy. It's organic agave nectar. And agave nectar actually has a higher glycemic index than table sugar does. So that means that your insulin will actually spike more if you have agave nectar than if you have a spoonful of sugar. And the way that sugar works, just to give a really, really quick primer, because I want to get back to your stories and I don't want to talk too much, but I at least want people to understand this, that when sugar comes into your body, if you have a high amount of sugar in your bloodstream. So if you have high blood sugar, then your pancreas secretes insulin and it shuttles that extra blood sugar out of the bloodstream so you can regulate your blood sugar. And what happens is that extra sugar becomes what are called triglycerides, which is a fancy word for fat. So if you're eating fatty foods thinking this is why I'm getting fat, it's not. The reason that you're gaining weight and accumulating fat on your body is sugar. It's excess sugar in your bloodstream that's transported and converted to triglycerides, which is fat. So I want to make sure that people understand that. But the reason that I really wanted to have this show is not so much to geek out on food science, and I certainly know I have the tendency to go down that rabbit hole. But I want to talk so much more about how it affects us as creative professionals. So I first want to go through what you two experienced, because you talked somewhat about how the withdrawal process was hard, but let's actually specifically go into what withdrawal symptoms you had and then what are the positive things that you saw as far as creativity, focus, sustained energy that you started to experience once the sugar and the sweets were removed. So we'll go to you, Monica, and then we'll go to you, Sean.
Well, first I want to say to Sean is I don't think you should feel ashamed at all, because I am a sugar addict, obviously. And the way I help fight my cravings is I have my sugar sponsors, which like the PAs at work, my husband, like they make me accountable. So I have someone hold me accountable. So it's just like, okay, no, I can do this. I'm not going to give in to that stupid craving. And so I actually have people help me get through that. And it's like a constant thing. And I refuse to let them buy any like sweets or sugary stuff in the house because I know we will eat them quickly. So I don't think you should feel ashamed at all. I have sponsors, as I call them, that helps me with my sugar issues.
Thank you. And thank you for saying, yeah. I mean, I had such a hard time with it. And whenever I've spoken to people, and I haven't really spoken to many people about it at all. I think, people on Facebook that are friends with me know that I have done this, but really getting into the bones of what my behaviors were like before, when I have talked to someone about that, there is this dawning look on their face when they realize, oh, this is serious. And I didn't really take it serious before. And now I've heard just how bad it was for you and how much of a struggle it was for you. I can see that you need support. And I had said to people, like, maybe just treat me like an alcoholic, think of it in those terms. Like, I really don't want to be around it. I don't want to be offered it. I don't want it around me. And if you think of it in those terms, then it becomes less of a kind of joke, which was the barrier that I had in explaining this to people. There have been a couple of instances where I can see that dawning look of realization on someone's face. And I do feel this kind of deep sense of, oh, you get this now. And I can see from the look on your face, you think it's really bad. And I do think it's really bad. And I'm kind of admitting to that sense of shame because I don't want anyone who's listening to this to feel like they're alone in that feeling. And that if you are feeling that, as you said, it's not actually a shameful thing, but it's sort of natural, I think, to feel maybe a bit embarrassed, and especially if you go on a podcast and talk about it to lots and lots of people. But, thank you so much for the encouragement and your kind words. It's really lovely.
Now back to Zach's question. So the sugar withdrawals, oh God, I'm about to go through them again this week, and I know it's going to suck. So the first couple days, I think, were the worst. It's funny. It's physical things happen. Like, I had weird aches all over my body, and I was like, what is happening? And I got these horrible headaches. And it's not like I was starving or anything, but I would be really hungry. And I was like, but I just ate and I know I'm full, but why am I feeling so hungry? And I was like, okay, maybe I'm thirsty. And one thing I noticed, like cutting the sugars out, I also got really dehydrated because I was eating so much healthier and my body was just trying to figure out how to process things differently. It was just kind of, my body became a mess essentially. There was Advil involved because I had to get through the workday without like a terrible migraine. And it lasted, I think, maybe about 4 days. The second or third day was the worst of it. And so after getting through in the way I kind of got through it, I had to take Advil. I just tried to, drink as much water as I could get down, which wasn't very much. That's another issue I have. I just don't drink enough water. Nearly enough at all. And I just, tried to stay focused on work and distract myself with, it's like, well, I have all these things I have to do. So since I have to get these things done, I don't have time to think about that. I really want that cookie that's on the table over there that someone just brought in. And I would just remove myself with the room and try not to look at it, at sweets at the time. But yeah, it was just like, I felt physically ill, and the aches I knew the headaches were going to come because I've gotten headaches before when I did like the Beachbody 3-day cleanse. The second day is when it usually hits me. But the aches were a little more surprising. I'd had experienced them to that level. And it was just really strange. I found after I kind of went through those withdrawals, I wasn't, I didn't feel like snacking as much. When you snack, it's like you're just kind of grabbing whatever is readily available within reach. So I didn't feel like snacking as much on junk. Even, I would want to snack even when I wasn't hungry before. And now it's like, I didn't want to snack as much because I wasn't hungry. I didn't need to eat. And I was more focused. I had more energy. Things just felt clearer. And it's funny. It really hit me how much of an effect sugar had on me. So I did this during the holidays, which going to the extremes of completely cutting it out is really hard during the holidays.
More power to you for choosing that time of year, by the way.
Thank God, because guess what? During Thanksgiving, I did not gain any weight, unlike I'm sure everyone else. I had really healthy meals. I allowed myself, because the program was super strict. So I allowed myself a little bit of stuffing, like, palm size serving of stuffing, a little bit of palm size serving of mashed potatoes. So that's something that's like, okay, portion sizes. That's an important thing to keep in mind. And afterwards, everyone was having pumpkin pie, and I love pumpkin pie, and I usually put more whipped cream topping on it than there is pie. I didn't have the whipped cream, and I just kept giving my husband the puppy dog. So I was like, I've been so good. Can I just have one little bite of pumpkin pie? He was like, no. I was like, please, just one little bite. He gave me like a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of pumpkin pie. I immediately got this horrible headache and felt sick for a couple hours afterwards. So I was like, well, that curbed any craving I had for desserts and pumpkin pie. And it was just like, it was amazing to me. Like, my body just could not process that. And it's just like, why are you eating this crap? We don't want this. And so it was kind of strange and eye-opening how much that was one tiny piece of pumpkin pie, like it wasn't even a spoonful, it was just a tiny piece. And it just made me so sick. So that kind of helped me to get through my cravings as well. It's one of those things. It's like I've been eating a little more sugar lately, where it's like, oh, I'll have one piece, and it's like what Sean was saying. It's like I'll have one piece, and it's funny. You have like a little bite, and you're like, oh, my head feels slightly weird, but it's okay. And then the next day, it's like you're building up your sugar tolerance again, and then that's when you just go over the top. Eventually, by the end of the week, and so it's just so strange how like it's very obvious how sugar affects me. And how for so many years, it's like, why did I feel like crap for so long? Oh, because I eat sugar in everything. And I didn't, realize that was why. That was like a big reason why. But it's one of those things. It's like, I still want my big ice cream cake for my birthday. But at the same time, I'm like, man, I really don't want that ice cream cake for my birthday because I know it's going to make me feel like crap, but it tastes so good.
Yeah, and it's interesting because pretty much all of the symptoms that you talked about are very, very similar to what happens if you go through alcohol or drug withdrawal. And they, again, have done studies where they have seen the mirrors, especially in mice and rats, but also in humans, where when you withdraw from cocaine, heroin, any type of opiate, or you withdraw from sugar, you almost can't differentiate between the withdrawal symptoms. And it sounds like you certainly experienced them as well. And the one thing I want to mention before we go to Sean's experience is you had said you just felt so hungry. That's because your blood sugar is plummeting and you're just craving and craving and craving that to fix that. And once you get away from that and get through that initial period of 3 to 4 days, everything, at least as far as I'm concerned, if I'm going through my experience with sugar, which I won't go into too deep, but that's what happens to me. Like you had mentioned the 3-day refresh. That to me is like my silver bullet. Whenever I feel like, you know what? The sugar cravings are becoming a bit too much. I'm eating too much crap. I need to just hit the reset button. I need to restart the computer, hit the reset button. The 3-day refresh is an amazing program, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. I actually did a full review of it, and I now use it like once every 3 months just to reset my system. And I'm not a big fan of a lot of Beachbody's supplements and products, but this is one that just they hit a home run. But I will find that food, like you said, foods start to taste completely different. And things like broccoli and cauliflower and kale and salmon and all these things actually taste really good and flavorful. Whereas when I'm eating a lot of sugar and sweets, that stuff tastes like crap because your taste buds readjust. So there's a whole gamut of things that happen to the human body when you're withdrawing from sugar. So let's now go to Sean's side of it. And I'm assuming that these will be fairly similar, but I'd like to hear it from your perspective as well.
Yeah, exactly. My kind of withdrawal, if you like, sounds very similar to Monica's, with the added addition that my gums would really hurt for those first 2-3 days. It felt like someone had kicked a football into my face. Did you ever like get kicked in the face when you're in the playground and that like pain that's just very sustained in the front of your mouth? It felt like this pressure, like someone was pressing on my mouth and in my jaw. And so that was always a very keen indicator to me that like, you need some sugar. You need some chocolate. You've forgotten to have your chocolate bar today. And so for the first few days, the physical symptoms were very obvious: headaches, pain in my gum, my jaw, a sort of restlessness that I could never really put a finger on. And put my finger on. And I watched a documentary called That Sugar Film, which I recommend if anyone interested in this. And the person in it describes that process like giving up smoking. They said they haven't felt that way since they gave up smoking. That just kind of, there's a restlessness inside. It was inside me that I couldn't quite define, like a set kind of anxiety. And like Monica, when I accidentally had something sugary, like I had some aloe vera juice and I was like, geez, that's so sweet. And I didn't realize at all when I looked, on the nutritional information on the side and it's got a buttload of sugar in it. Oh, okay. That's something I won't be drinking. And that first 3 months was just full of instances like that, where I'd pick up a thing that I would have all the time, or I really enjoyed, or I'd be really crave like sweet and sour chicken. And then I'd realize, oh, well, the clue's really in the name. Like I should have realized that that's why I like it, because it's all syrupy and sweet and lovely. And so the first couple months were just sort of crossing out and discovering and crossing out foods that I liked that I didn't realize had loads of sugar in. And of course, this is on the run up to Christmas, and for Christmas presents, me and my boyfriend, we baked a proper Christmas cake, and it's a very dense fruit cake. And 1 or 2 months before Christmas, and you put loads of sherry in it, and then you put more sherry in it every week, and it just keeps going back in the tin, back on the shelf, and it's amazing. And we made mint one for everybody, and made up little hampers, and we were going to make mince pies. And last year I made mince pies as presents. Do you guys have mince pies in the US?
I've heard of them. I've had mince meat pies, but I've never had a mince pie. So I think it's different in the US, or at least for me, than it is in the UK.
Okay, it's like a small pastry cup, and inside it's got what we would call mincemeat, but it's lots of dried fruit in kind of gloop, and they are delicious. Zach, they're delicious. I will send you some.
Well, if it has gloop, I'm sure that it is, because I'm a big fan of gloop.
They are delicious, but they're obviously incredibly sweet because it's just sugar. Last year, I bought some shop-bought mincemeat in a jar, made the pastry, bunged it in, and ate them, and everything was lovely. And this year, I did the same thing, and I took a bite out of it, and I was nearly sick. And I had the exact same thing Monica was describing. I had something that I didn't realize had that much sugar in it, ate a small part of it, and I felt nauseated for about 2 or 3 hours afterwards. And we threw it all away and made mincemeat from scratch, and we put like a third of the sugar from the recipe in it. So they were really comparatively low in added sugar, and you could taste the fruit. And it was the first time I'd ever really tasted the dried fruit in it. And that brings me on to another sort of development that I didn't see coming, which was I could separate finally the taste of sugar and the taste of chocolate, for example, the taste of sugar and the taste of fruit. They were just one and the same thing for me. And it turns out chocolate isn't that much fun if it's not mixed with sugar. It doesn't taste that great. Like, I tried cocoa and I was like, it's bitter and it's not that much fun. And I also came to realize that I was using these sweet foods as a reward system. A reward if I was happy, a reward if I was sad, or other, like a crutch if I was sad, or hey, I was just really trying to find reasons to have sweet things. And so there was a lot of mental games going on. And then my birthday happened, and everyone very sweetly wanted to give me cake and cupcakes and sweet things. At every turn, I stuck to my guns and, thanked everyone for the sweet food. And it was a really lovely thought, but that I couldn't have it. And everyone was very understanding.
Well, I would say that you should be proud of being able to do that, because that's not an easy thing to do. So rather than being ashamed or thinking that you shouldn't have been eating those things, the fact that you could be given all of those things and have them around you in a social setting where the ritual is that you're just expected to eat these things, to have the willpower and the strength to say no thank you, that to me is something that should be applauded and celebrated rather than being ashamed of all of the other things. So I think you should definitely focus on that, because that takes a tremendous amount of strength to do that, frankly, I don't even have the strength to do usually. So you should definitely be applauded for that. But one thing,
thank you very much.
You're welcome. One thing that you brought up, and I'm glad that you brought this up because I was going to bring it up as well, is you mentioned that sugar film. And this is a film that was done by an Australian documentarian named Damon, I think it's Gamow or Gamo. I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but it's kind of like the Super Size Me of sugar. And he decided that he was going to see what sugar really does to a person. But here's the catch, and this is where it's really interesting. He didn't eat chocolate bars and ice cream and all these horrible foods. He said, I'm going to eat quote unquote health foods that are laced with sugar. So these are things like low-fat yogurt, fruit juice, health bars, cereal, all these things that are marketed to us as health foods. And his health deteriorated just as rapidly as it did for Morgan Spurlock when he was in Super Size Me eating McDonald's foods. And that's the part that's really terrifying to me, is realizing that it's not just about, oh, well, I don't eat cookies all day long, but there's sugar in pasta sauce. There's sugar in loaves of bread. There's sugar in over 80% of our food supply. And I really think it's important for people to understand that those things are there. We don't realize they're there, But the reason, again, like I had mentioned earlier, that it's so important that I wanted to bring this to this audience specifically is not so much because this podcast is about here's how to lose 20 pounds in 30 days or here's how to look good, on the beach. It's what does it take for us to be high performance machines in front of our workstations? Because if somebody is saying, I want you to make thousands upon thousands of creative decisions all day long, and I want you to do it for 12 to 16 hours a day, and I want you to do it for 5 or 6 days a week, and we're never going to give you a break. One of the things that you're doing as a creative professional that will severely limit your ability to perform at that level and be able to concentrate and focus without exhausting yourself is sugar. Sugar is my kryptonite. I know that if I want to be creative for long periods of time, it's not about, oh, well, I don't want to gain a pound or two, or, what goes in the lips goes on the hips. That's not the way that I think. I think, all right, it's Monday at lunch and it's somebody's birthday party and they have red velvet cupcakes. And if I have that red velvet cupcake for the next 3 days, my focus is gone. I'm not going to be able to edit. I'm not going to be able to cut scenes. I'm going to be all over the place, have lack of focus, just go on Facebook and email and all these things that we use as distractions when we can't focus. For me, that comes from sugar. It also comes from gluten. I have a sensitivity to gluten, which is a whole nother show and another rabbit hole that I won't go into. But sugar is my kryptonite for focus, which is why I wanted to bring it to this audience. So for both of you, we can go back to Monica first and then we'll go to you, Siân. But what did you notice specifically when you started to remove sugar and your ability to just work for longer stretches of time without feeling distracted? And you mentioned that you weren't as hungry anymore, you weren't snacking, but what did it actually do to your ability to be creative?
Well, I was able to focus more, which is difficult to do because just assistant editing, I get interrupted all the time, like every 10 minutes. So it's hard for me to get into a groove without someone coming in and asking for something else. I have to be able to get focused really quickly and be able to switch gears really quickly. And it's just not one of those things where I'll get like 4 hours uninterrupted. It just doesn't happen. If I get 20 minutes uninterrupted, I'm happy. So I was able to focus better and just kind of get back to work quicker when I had to switch gears, sleep better. That's another big thing. And that I noticed, especially this last week, because I went a little sugar happy. I blame the donut last Friday, but I've actually been having trouble sleeping. They're not good deep sleeps. I'm restless all the time, and I've just noticed it. The worse I get with sugar, the worse it gets. So when I cut sugar out, I sleep better. And as a result, I feel more rested throughout the day, and I'm able to focus better on top of just being able to focus in general because I'm not as tired. And I don't know. I just feel like I could think better.
Yeah, and that to me, that's the home run. That's really what I'm trying to help people do is think better and create better and make more decisions over a longer period of time without having mental fatigue. I know that I experience all those things hands down when I stay away from sugar. But did you experience some of the same things, Siân?
I experienced two main things. And the first one was that I wasn't experiencing the peaks and troughs of the sugar and the adrenaline and the insulin that kind of just bounce you through. My energy has just really evened out. I'm not wishing I could have a nap in the afternoon anymore. Like I'm fine. I'm awake and it's cool. I don't think I have more energy, but I think I'm not riding an energy roller coaster anymore. It's just very smooth across the day. And the second one is that my mood is far more consistent as well. Like I'm not suffering like a mood dip either. I feel my mood has a stability now to it, that it feels very reliable. And I think I still get distracted, honestly. I could distract myself till the cows come home. But the energy and the mood, those really were such huge things for me. Because I thought this is just how it happened. I thought everyone fell asleep, or wanted to sleep in the afternoon after lunch. And everyone just got, oh God, everything's rubbish in the afternoon. And, and I'm not feeling sick, after I've eaten because I haven't just had, chocolate or something like that. So my health feels way better and unrelated to post-production, but a surprising plus was I pretty much stopped getting spots. Like my skin has not been the best. And then since I've given up sugar, it's looking pretty great. Don't want to brag, Zach, but it's looking pretty great. When I first gave up sugar, I bought 5 books of kind of healthy, sugar-free meals, and I as I was cracking them open, they were like, "You're going to glow." Like this glow. Every second word is glowing, which made me, shut them and put them away again. Because if someone's telling you stuff like that, I feel sold to. I feel patronized, and I haven't actually touched them, but they weren't entirely being untruthful.
No, there's a lot of science that backs that up. That when you start eliminating toxins like sugar and gluten and a lot of processed starches and all the processed foods in our system, your skin completely changes. Because really, your skin is known as the barometer for kind of your overall general health. So I can attest to all of that. And I literally lived with the worst acne for almost 20 years. And as soon as I changed my diet, my skin just transformed. I was like, oh my God, I look like a different person. So I've experienced that as well.
No more foundation for me.
Yeah, me neither. I don't have to put foundation on in the morning, which is so helpful. Oh my God. So much time.
The time you save.
Yes, exactly. Well, I don't want to keep you guys too much longer because we've been on here for quite a while, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, and we could turn this into a 2, 3, 4-part series. But a couple of areas or resources that I want to send people to if they're thinking, whoa, this is a little bit bigger than I thought. I just thought I had to, be careful of chocolate bars and Coke, and it's a much, much bigger problem than that. So the few places I would recommend you go, number one, check out That Sugar Film. Another one is there's a documentary called Fed Up that talks a lot about the food science and the food industry and politics behind sugar and how it's in our food system. That's another one to check out. There's also a link to an article that was done by the New York Times that's called Is Sugar Toxic? And this is kind of one of the foundational articles that almost anybody will send you to and say, if you want to just get started and really understand the idea behind sugar being a toxic substance, if you're thinking, oh, it's just a bunch of BS, go ahead and read this first and then go ahead and formulate an argument. But it's a really, really good article. So I'm going to have a link to that as well for you. And then the next thing I would say is if you're thinking, well, I don't have any problem with sugar. Sugar's fine. It's not affecting me. Then go ahead and just give yourself 7 days. Completely cut it out of your life. If you feel no different, then sugar's not a problem for you. But if through those 7 days you went through a lot of these withdrawal symptoms, you will start to see that sugar does have a much more profound effect on you. And then more importantly, start to introduce it back into your diet and see what the effect is. Because that's what I'll do with a lot of people that say, oh, well, gluten's a bunch of BS. It doesn't affect me at all. I'll say, maybe you're right. Just go ahead and cut it completely out of your diet. See if you notice any change, and you might not, but then introduce it back in and see how you feel. And 9 times out of 10, when you introduce it back, you say, oh my God, I can't believe I felt so crappy. It's because you just become used to it. It's kind of that analogy of the frog boiling in water. And I use this analogy for sitting all day long, but it works really well for food as well. Or if you take a frog and you throw him in a pot of boiling water, he's going to leap out. But if you put a frog in lukewarm water and you boil it, he won't feel a thing until he's cooked. And it's kind of the same thing with sugar and gluten and all these other toxic substances. You're getting low levels, so you don't eat it and vomit or throw up like you just had a spoonful of Drano. But it's something that does affect you on low levels and causes chronic health problems throughout your life. But if you just eradicate it completely and then reintroduce it, you get a much more acute response. Or maybe you don't, but you're going to know whether or not it's something that affects you and affects your performance by just doing an elimination of just that one thing. So don't change your whole diet. Don't change your whole life. Just say, I'm going to eat all the same things, except I'm going to remove foods that have sugar or sweeteners just for 7 to 10 days and see what happens. And then you can formulate more of an argument as to whether or not you think sugar is something that's toxic to your own system. And it sounds like both of you have pretty much done that own self-experiment and have realized very clearly that sugar is something that does affect you profoundly.
One thing I've noticed that I take as a win, so I travel to Northern California a lot. So I'm, driving that stretch of the 5 where, there are fast food places and gas stations. And, it's like when I stop and I used, and I'm still struggling with sweets now, but now when I go into the little gas station stores trying to find a snack because I'm hungry, it's like I look on the shelves. So I was like, there's absolutely nothing I can eat here because it's all like chips, Pringles, candies. Even the nuts are mixed with candy and have all this extra junk on them. So I'm like, there is absolutely nothing I could eat here at all. Whereas before I'd be like, ooh, I'm going to take the Hostess cupcake and get some Cheetos. And so, even though I'm still struggling with it, now I have no desire to pull anything off those shelves because I'm just gross. I still have a long drive to go and I don't want to feel like crap on the drive. It's just that mental shift, I feel like, is like a small victory that I'm just not immediately going, ooh, yay, Skittles, when, I'm on those long road trips that I take like once or twice a month.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing worse on a road trip than just filling up on all that stuff, because I will just have the hardest time staying awake and focusing, and it will make road trips miserable. So I definitely can understand all of that.
Well, I was going to say, before we run away, there were two things that really helped me over the last kind of, I don't know how many months now, five months or so. The first one was concentrating on home cooking. And my recommendation to anyone who wants to do this is get yourself a cookbook, because so much of the sugar that you're taking in is through ready meals and through pasta sauces, like you were saying. And the act of cooking all your own food, you can see when the recipes like add a buttload of sugar. And you can make that decision whether you want it in there or not, whether you want to cook that thing or not. And then just being very conscious about what's in your food, it helped me so much. And over the first couple of months, I think I was overeating. I didn't see any weight loss. And then in the third month, I lost like 7 pounds in 3 weeks. And I can only really accredit that to because I wasn't eating, my sugar hadn't gone up and down. It was just not there. So I was eating kind of proper portion sizes of home cooked food. And the second one, was actually Monica brought up, was to have someone in your corner, have someone who knows what you're going through. My partner, he gave up sugar at the same time in support, he completely off his own back. I've never asked him to do that. And to have someone around you who can see what you're going through and can also commiserate with they've just brought in the Friday chocolate bar box or whatever it is. It was really, really helped. My housemates were great too. They were wonderful. Because they eat a lot of chocolate. We hide it in the cupboards. If I see it, I just pick it up and put it somewhere else. And cook. Cook your own stuff and have someone in your corner.
Those are great suggestions, and I love the idea of Monica having a sugar sponsor. There's no question that I will be incorporating that idea into the programs that I'm creating. And the other thing that I want to do, I want to give people kind of a really simple place to start where they don't feel overwhelmed. So I think I'm going to create a bonus document that goes with this episode that's just kind of here are the simple places to get started. And I think the two that you mentioned are really, really good ones. And I'll throw in a few other helpful places with resources and some simple steps that people can follow, because this is kind of one of those you just need to take a small baby step forwards, see a little bit of an immediate reaction, and then you want to go further down the rabbit hole. Whereas if somebody says, well, just do all of this deprivation for 30 to 60 days and lose all this weight, most people don't end up making that journey. But if people just look at it as a much shorter journey with much greater gains that happen almost immediately, that's where the wins start to happen. So I want to make sure that I can encourage people to do that and go down that road, because it will make a tremendous difference in the way you feel and the moods you experience, your level of creativity, your level of focus. And these are all things that people want in our industry. So I'm going to do my best to provide tools that are going to help people do that. So on that note, I cannot thank the both of you enough for being willing to candidly share your stories and your addiction to sugar and everything you've gone through. And never, ever use the word shame again. Do not do it. I will not allow that to happen.
We have this saying in my house, the shame bell. Did you watch the Game of Thrones episode where Cersei walks down the stairs?
No, I'm not a Game of Thrones watcher, because I don't appreciate it. I just don't have HBO.
We all watched it together, and we tease each other when one of us is, left the kitchen in a mess or whatever. You get a shame bell across the WhatsApp.
Very cool.
Your listeners will know.
All right. Well, Monica, Sean, thank you so much. I guarantee that you guys are going to be back again. I mean, Monica, I practically record with you every other week now, so I might as well just call you a co-host. But I definitely want to have you guys back as well, because I'm sure this will be a very, very helpful show for a lot of people, I hope.
Well, my next step, because this whole thing is part of a larger process for me. Even though I've actually gotten a little bit of concern from people about this personal trainer food thing, but I'm actually, the way I use it is not 100% the way they sell it. I'm using it to train myself to make better food choices, because it's all real food. And I'm sorry, Sean, I can't learn to cook. I hate it. But what I do is I make hard-boiled eggs. That's easy. And that's my snack sometimes, is I'll just have a hard-boiled egg. But it's part of my larger process. It's okay, I need to cut I was eating better, but I was having a lot of sugar. Now that I'm cutting sugar out of what I eat, now it's just trying to integrate the small kind of regular exercises, not like a rigorous training, but it's something you talked about in like I think it was the Ben Greenfield podcast. He's like those little things you could do throughout the day. So for me, this is just one aspect of a larger process. And the way I make it so it's not so overwhelming to me is I'm usually just kind of focusing on one aspect at a time, and then I build on it is what I'm doing.
That's the entire fitness and post philosophy right there, is finding one tiny thing, hit that, and then build on it. It's no different than editing. You find one edit to make, that edit works, and then you build off of that. And before you know it, you have a 90-minute film with thousands of edits in it.
Yeah.
It's the same process. So I'm glad that you look at it the same way. And I'm very, very glad that we were able to have this conversation today. So thank you both so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having us, Zach. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to episode 68 of the Fitness and Post podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to access any of the resources discussed, visit our show notes at fitnessandpost.com/68. As a reminder, I have prepared a bonus document titled 5 Ways to Overcome Your Sugar Addiction, with helpful programs and resources to help you if you want to cut back on harmful sugar and sweeteners, but you don't know where to start. You can download your free bonus document at fitnessandpost.com/68download. This episode is sponsored by editstock.com. Editstock provides high-quality, uncut film footage for those who want to learn or practice the art of video editing. This cool service offers raw footage from a variety of genres, including action, comedy, sports, and documentary, so you can pick the same kinds of projects you're looking to get hired for. You know the frustration of needing a reel to get a job and then needing a job to get a reel? Editstock solves this old chicken and egg problem by allowing you to use your cuts for your demo reel. Editstock is ideal for assistant editors trying to move up, editors transitioning to a new style or genre, and people who are brand new to editing. Editstock can even give you professional feedback on your work. Best of all, every time you buy raw footage on Editstock, 30% of the purchase goes to the filmmaker who created it. So you can help these indie directors earn back their budgets. Multi-user educational licenses are also available. Visit editstock.com to download a free sample scene and use the code FITNESS to save 10% on your order. Thank you for listening. Be well.